Welcome to the Opt-in Podcast. I am your host, Melissa Franks, and this is where we go from surviving to thriving in business. This week, we are talking about politics. You got it right. We are going to be talking about how politics play a role inside of your business and how you, the business owner, the leader, should be navigating what is a very tumultuous and uncertain political climate. We are not going to spend any time today debating the issues. We are not going to talk about right and wrong. We're not going to talk about which direction you should go. We're not going to talk about this day in history and what is going to be said about you decades from now. What we are going to talk about is how you address the very real and present dialogue that's happening in the world and in the US specifically around politics and what showing up as a business owner looks like. I've had a variety of conversations with owners in the last few weeks, specifically following the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency actions in Minneapolis. As those began to come to a head, as Renee Good lost her life, the question that was coming back to me was twofold. From those that were being incredibly vocal about their opinions and beliefs on the internet, and from those that were saying nothing. Both groups were asking the same thing. What should I do? What impact will it have on my business if I stay quiet? What impact will it have on my business if I have a dissenting point of view? What impact will it have on my business if I say nothing? And the reality is, we don't know. So today, what we're going to talk about in this podcast is how you can make decisions about what you say from your personal brand point of view and your business brand point of view, and what you don't say. The reality is this is all individualistic. I'm not going to be able to give you a checklist or a freebie that's going to help you navigate the waters of the current political climate and make a decision about what to do. I'm hopeful that at the end of this podcast, by sharing at least my experience and the guidance that I'm giving my clients, you will be more informed to decide what to do as the weeks and months progress. To set the stage, I'm recording this on a Wednesday, January 21st. You're listening to this in February. What I don't know is what has happened between the date that I record this and the day that you listen to this. In fact, you may be listening to this years in the future and still trying to navigate this topic. I'm going to do what I can to ground us in truth, current events as examples, and also have a bit of timeless feedback so that we can move along in our journey. Now, there is an earlier podcast that you can reference. We will include that link in the show notes where I talk about social media, personal social media use by employees inside of your business. We spend a good amount of time talking about how it's your obligation as a business owner, employer, leader to define, articulate, communicate, and enforce your social media policy. What does that mean? It means that you need to be very, very clear with the people that work for you what the guidelines are for them using social media when they may be in positions where they are reflecting the brand or the business. The most common examples of this is if you're carrying or wearing logoed merchandise and you're doing something, aka attending a protest. Those guidelines are incredibly important and they collide. That podcast is a good one for you to listen to because it collides with what we're doing here, what we're talking about today. Now, the rule of thumb has always been, unless you're Ben and Jerry, literally, that politics don't belong in business. It's a little bit like in polite society, we don't talk about religion and politics. We don't talk about it at the Thanksgiving dinner table. We keep it quiet. That's just not what we do. That's for inside of your house. The reality is, starkly, that business and politics have collided. We are seeing business owners having to make decisions on the fly about whether or not they're going to allow law enforcement into their building to conduct an operation, about whether or not they're going to allow somebody to run in and then keep them safe. We are watching business owners live on the news, on TikTok, on all of the things, have to make snap decisions about how to behave. Just yesterday, in the town that I am in, there was a call for all small business owners to participate in a protest, to walk out of their businesses and shut the doors at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The world has now converged, and it is difficult, if not impossible, to remain neutral, to remain as Switzerland. And if you do, you are taking a position as if you were speaking what was aligned. My core belief is that every business has defined values. They're often referred to in your business as your mission, your purpose, and your core values. These are things that you sit down, that you labor over, you work with your teams on. You want everybody to rally around what our vision, mission, and purpose is. And underpinning that is how we work, aka our core values. And the challenge that's being presented is that we've all checked that box. We've all stood up the business. We've all made some money. We've all had these things on our website that talk about our beliefs and what we stand for. And now what is being seen is that there is an inconsistency between what you have communicated publicly and how you are acting. This is that old adage that actions speak louder than words. You can say whatever you want on your website. You can have whatever you want in your email signature. It's what you are doing or not doing in some cases that's actually going to define your brand, your reputation, and the values that the world at large perceives for you. If your business claims values, those values must show up publicly, especially when they are challenged. For example, one of the core values at On-Call COO, one of my core values as a human, is foster inclusion. It would be incredibly misaligned if I stayed silent when there were challenges to DEI policies. It would be incredibly misaligned if I stayed silent as we watched LGBTQIA+ policies and equality measures removed. It would be misaligned if I did not speak up and communicate that literally everybody belongs here in the US, and there are those that are here and documented and those that are not. Because my core value, one of the many, is foster inclusion. Your core values are going to be different. That is what is amazing about our businesses. We stand for different things, we have different priorities, we have different missions. But what's happening right now, there is a tension point between what your values are and how you are showing up, and it's those that are in misalignment that are getting scrutinized the heaviest. So the question isn't, do politics belong in business? We're not talking about endorsing candidates or parties or legislation. What we're talking about is core values. What we're talking about is ethics, humanity, and brand alignment. Many issues out there right now are labeled as political. Many of them are getting labeled as this is left-leaning, this is right-leaning. I mean, heck, in fact, at this point, people are saying left extremists and right extremists. There is no middle ground anymore, it appears. And they're labeled political because what people don't want to say is that they're human. They're ethical challenges. There are challenges to the operations or the way that we govern and live and move through the universe. Silence is not neutral. Silence is not neutral. Choosing to not respond is still taking a stand. And this is where many people are missing the mark. Recently in social media, what we have started to see happen is that businesses and creators and leaders in all sorts of industries are coming under fire for not saying a word. by remaining silent, by attempting to be neutral. The marketplace as a whole, both sides, left and right, and heck, down the middle, are all coming out and asking, if you stand for nothing, then do you stand for anything? What do you stand for? What is important? How are you caring for people? Step up and say something. And you, if you're standing in the middle, are starting to really feel conflicted. You're worried that you are going to lose your business if you say what's on your mind and what you believe and what you stand for. And you're also seeing potentially that your business is contracting because you're staying silent. This is a lose-lose situation. The cost of staying silent is quite extreme if you take a look at it. When businesses stay silent and internally claim strong values, there is an authenticity gap. This is when businesses start to be seen as disingenuous. A year ago, when we started to see the rollback of DEI policies, initiatives, partnerships, the first thing that got very, very public was that Target was being boycotted. They were being boycotted because they were quietly attempting to remove the presence of minority products from their shelves. They were doing that through a variety of decision-making processes related to DEI. They changed their merchandising footprint. Target, which was once a location where you could walk in and you could find Pride merchandise in June, and they were celebrating individuality and identity, began to really pull that back. And it was misaligned to what they stood for publicly. What their values were, what they had been known for, came out of alignment with their actions. They didn't say a word. They didn't come out into the marketplace and declare, you know what, we are pulling back, and here is why. And what ended up happening is that the populace filled in the gap. The populace created the narrative. It's possible that some of those brands were pulled from the shelves because they weren't profitable and they weren't selling. We'll never know, because what ended up happening instead is that individuals came forward and said, this is why it's happening. It's happening because they're being discriminatory. And once that narrative is out there, you can't pull it back. So look at the Target example. They were saying one thing internally. They were understood well by the populace externally for standing for a set of values, and then quietly they started to do something else, and it broke the understanding of who they authentically were. It created a gap in understanding, and when it created a gap in understanding, it allowed room for other people to inject their perceptions and to completely sway national sentiment. Target has not rebounded and recovered from that moment. In fact, they're coming under additional scrutiny now because they're allowing law enforcement to use their locations as staging points. Just yesterday, I saw a protest happening inside of a Target in Minneapolis. And they were doing it by purchasing something and returning it, creating long lines and bottlenecking the store, halting operations through a standard process of trying to return something. It's the market saying that we see that you're no longer authentic and we're pushing back on it. When you have misalignment, so when you have internally strong values, which are well understood, you have employees that rally around to those values. You have people that have pride in working at the business that they work at. And when there is misalignment, when your public actions, your public communication, or lack thereof, is misaligned to the internal values everybody knows and rallies around, you lose the trust of your employees. You lose the credibility with customers, as Target has. You dilute your brand. And eventually you have leadership erosion. Performative neutrality is creating a hollow business landscape. Those that are staying silent, those that are operating in misalignment between what they say internally and what they are doing externally, are creating a disingenuous experience. And the reason that people buy from brands, the reason that people follow you on social media, the reason that people are loyal and refer is because they understand what you stand for, who you are, and what you're going to get. When you become hollow, when you have an authenticity gap, when you have a separation between what you say and what you do, you harm the business long term. And when you have employees that do not trust you, when you have leadership erosion and you have brand dilution, you have a sinking ship. The cost of staying silent is extreme. And if that's what you're doing right now, you really need to consider if you're willing to pay the price and if you have a plan to course correct long term. Now, one of the things that I have heard a couple of times, although I want to be clear that this has been significantly less than I have heard before. However, some public figures are coming out and saying this, and this isn't my job. It is not my job to share this information. It is not my job to communicate my beliefs. I'm just here to run a business. I don't want to alienate people. It is too risky for me to put my toe in the water. I want to challenge your thinking if you're having those thoughts. If you think that you're just here to run a business and that it's too risky if you communicate your values, and when something is happening that's misaligned to your values, I want you to consider this. Leadership has always required courage. Values without expression are meaningless. If you are staying silent because you're concerned of the risk, if you don't want to alienate people, if frankly you think that it's not your responsibility, you're not being courageous. You're not being a leader. Your values are hollow. You stand for nothing. This is a moment in time where everything is polarizing. So you are either in one way or you are in another. But you can't be out, because when you are out, it means you stand for nothing. Nothing. And when you stand for nothing, it's incredibly difficult for people to bond and relate to you and your business. Consumers, employees, and partners expect clarity. They move away from ambiguity. Brené Brown, I say this often, she says to be clear is to be kind. Stop worrying about whether or not your values are polarizing. Because you know what? If they were, you'd already know. You've got them on your website. Be significantly more worried about how you're living and showing up in those values and demonstrating that they matter in times where it is important, where everybody is watching, where it can absolutely make a difference. So I want to talk for a few minutes around what it actually looks like to be values-led. We spend a lot of time talking about what happens if you don't say anything. We've talked a lot about the fact that you do have values and that they're likely on your website and your employees know what they are, and so does the general public. And if you say them but don't believe them and show up in them, that it can create risk for your business. But what it looks like to actually be values-led in business is that you provide practical clarity. I want to say to you right now that when you are being practical about the actions that you take, it means that you don't react to everything. My call to action for you is to react to something. React when it's important, react when it matters, but don't react to everything. There's no reason for that. There are plenty of things that are happening in the world today that I'm confused by or I'm frustrated by that I'm not reacting to. Just yesterday, I will give you an example of this. Just yesterday, one of my kids said, "We're waiting for you to say something on social media about what's happening in Iran." And I kind of looked at them sideways and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "Well, you're talking about other things." And I said, "I am. And you're not talking about that." And I said, "Well, it's not because I'm not paying attention. And it's not because I am not concerned. It's because I don't have anything to say yet. I don't understand the complexities of the situation well enough for me to speak with confidence about my perspective." And it opened up a conversation with my kids around the reality that we can have these very strong values and we can have these really strong beliefs and we can have these perspectives that are grounded in fact and truth, and also hold space for the fact that we don't know everything. And we can spend time evaluating whether us sharing our perspective that is partially formed is going to be a bigger benefit than staying silent. And in this example, in this case, the topic of Iran and what is happening there, I shared with them, I just don't know enough yet for it to be meaningful. And I know enough about the other things that I'm speaking about, and I know enough about my core values and the things that are important to me that I'm doubling down on these things because I have a lot of facts and I have a lot of understanding and I have lived experience over here. And it doesn't mean I won't ever talk about other topics. It just means that right now my need to speak about these things weighs heavier. And so my choice, and what I would encourage you to do, is when you're being practical about where you provide clarity around political topics and your values, it means that you respond when something directly conflicts with your values or your mission. Just recently, they just haven't arrived yet, a local high school school board president, solo man, decided to remove the pride flag from the school campus. And when I caught wind of it, I asked the school if I could buy enough Everybody Belongs Here posters for every classroom in the school. And they said, yes, absolutely. A year ago, I also did that for a local middle school. I don't talk about it. It's not something that went on social media. But I saw something that happened in my community that was misaligned to my values, and I raised my hand and I said, hey, I can help. Do you want the help? And that is what responding when things are in conflict with your values looks like. That's what I'm talking about here. So when you are out there watching all of these various things that are happening in the political landscape, some filters that you can use so that you can kind of get the noise out and really figure out what you should be focusing on is this a labor practices topic? And is this misaligned to the values of my business? Do I need to say something? Is this a human rights topic? And is it misaligned to the values of my business? And do I need to say something? Do we have a perspective on access to healthcare? Do we have a perspective on education, on environmental responsibility? Do I need to say something? Are these my values, and is something happening out there in the world that's misaligned, and should I say something? And what you need to ask yourself, the questions you should be asking yourself are, does this issue directly conflict with our stated values? Does silence create misalignment or hypocrisy? Would our team expect us to say something? Ask yourself these questions as the topics come up. And if the answer is yes to any of them, then it is time for you to say something. Big or small, grand or quietly, it doesn't matter. It can be a note on your website, it can be an email to your newsletter, it can be something on social media, it can be a conversation with your employees to tell them how important it is that we speak out against something that is happening. You can speak and communicate about something is misaligned to your values in any form that you choose. The importance is that you do it. And what can sometimes happen is that you can swing into performative activism. And where we want you to be is in thoughtful leadership. So what I am not recommending is that you do reactive posting. I am not recommending that you make vague statements without corresponding action. I am not recommending that you jump on trends and you pile on. I am not recommending that you get into the comment section and you just start spitballing because you're angry. I am not recommending that you communicate anything from an emotional place. I am recommending that you are clear with where you stand, that you are incredibly consistent on the topic at hand, how you communicate, how you show up. And you also need to have a willingness to lose business for integrity. Those that stand in truth and prioritize integrity will understand that it comes with a cost and they're willing to pay it. You are thoughtful in what you communicate, how you show up, what you support, where your dollars go, who you endorse, who you are aligned with, the events that you are seen at. And every time you ask those questions, is the thing that I'm saying, is the place that I am, the person that I'm with, do they conflict with our stated values? Am I creating misalignment or hypocrisy? Would my team expect this from me or not? These are all things that you can use as a filter to determine what action to take and things to say and what to post and all the things. So the question at the beginning of this was, do politics belong in business? I would like to say that that's the wrong question. I would rather ask, how can we live with integrity publicly? How can we demonstrate our values publicly? How can we demonstrate that things happening in the world are in or out of alignment with what we stand for, and what actions do we take in order to communicate that? I want to be clear that you don't get to claim values privately and ignore them publicly. Your brand will be damaged. You will lose business long term, and your business will sacrifice long-term viability if this is the road you're walking down. I want you to consider today, as you listen to this podcast, if somebody were to come into your business tomorrow and audit your practices, your social media, your internal communication, your external communication, your nonprofit donations, would those be seen as in alignment with your values? Would they pass the audit? Or would there be confusion? Would there be gaps? How would you measure up? This is a period in the world where values matter more than anything else, where you are being given an invitation to rise to the occasion and speak out. And I know many of you are worried about damaging your businesses. And I know many of you are worried about reputational harm. And all that I can really think back to on this is the quote, and I can't remember who it comes from, that culture is what happens when nobody is watching. It was a famous quote about how you build a healthy culture inside of your business and how to know exactly what's happening. And when the leaders aren't there and they're not watching, culture is what remains. And in that same vein, the values that I embody, that my business embodies, is also the expectations that I expect of my employees. And I expect of my clients that we work with, and I expect of my children, and those that I choose to surround myself with. And because I'm so steadfast in my values, I don't have a concern that if I'm acting in congruence with them, that anything poor will happen to me or my business. Because I know that the goal isn't to be liked. The goal is to be aligned, credible, and real. I spent a lot of time thinking about whether or not I should record this. I will also, by the time you hear this, have published a Substack article about this. And my hesitancy wasn't around whether or not the message is right. It was around, is the world ready to hear it? Because I believe that when you are a small business owner, your business is a true reflection of you. And if you are staying silent, if you are hiding under the covers, I want to highlight for you that you're missing an opportunity to connect and be authentic and to really experience the joy that you can have when you are surrounded by other people that are like-minded in their values. So with that, I'm going to wish you all well. The best way that you can support this podcast is to rate, review, and subscribe. There will be a link in the bio for our Substack. I would love for you to come over there and join the conversation as well. And until next time, friends, please know that you are wise, you are strong, and you are capable, and I believe in you.